When COVID was happening, there was this push for vaccine passports. And a lot of the people that were pushing or creating the vaccine passports were part of this either ID 2020 or they were part of related entities pushing for digital ID. And essentially what happened with the vaccine passport was to link your identity to your travel, to the freedom of movement. And if you didn't have one, you were excluded from entering certain places. So that, again, highlights the idea of how these digital IDs are inherently exclusionary, because if you don't have one, then you're excluded from, moving where other people that have those.
What if three completely different news stories were actually connected? One story is about immigration. Another is about children in government custody. The third is about voter registration. At first glance, they seem unrelated. But what if they all point to the same question? Who gets recognized by the system, and who doesn't? Because in today's world, recognition is becoming just as important as identity itself. And according to some researchers and policy critics, this shift could reshape how people travel, vote, receive public services, and even access their own money. Today, we'll examine the facts behind these headlines, explore different perspectives, and ask an important question. Is digital identity simply the future of convenience, or could it also become a new form of control? On the same day, three major stories made headlines across the United States. The first involved immigration. A Supreme Court ruling stated that migrants who are turned away before physically entering the country cannot apply for asylum because, legally, they have not entered U.S. territory. The second story focused on hundreds of migrant children in government custody. According to reports, many of these children could face removal because no legally recognized sponsor has stepped forward to claim responsibility for them. The third headline centered on elections. A federal judge blocked an executive order that would have created a national voter registration database, while adding new documentation requirements for certain voting procedures. Different subjects, different laws, different government agencies. Yet some analysts argue that all three stories revolve around one common idea: recognition. In every case, access depends on whether a person is officially recognized within a legal system. Without that recognition, rights, services, or legal protections may become limited. This observation has become part of a larger debate surrounding digital identity systems now being discussed across many countries. Supporters believe digital identity could reduce fraud, improve security, simplify public services, and make government systems more efficient. Critics, however, argue that if access to essential services becomes tied to digital credentials, people who cannot, or choose not to, participate could face exclusion. That debate has grown significantly over the past few years, especially after one event changed how billions of people interacted with governments around the world: the COVID-19 pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of people experienced something many had never seen before. In several countries, digital health certificates or vaccine passports became part of daily life. For supporters, these systems were temporary public health tools designed to reduce the spread of disease and help societies reopen safely. For critics, however, they represented something much larger. They argued that these systems introduced a new model, one where access to travel, workplaces, public venues, and even everyday activities could depend on a digitally verified identity. That experience sparked a global conversation that continues today. If digital credentials can determine where people are allowed to go during a health emergency, could similar systems eventually be used for other areas of life? This is one of the central questions raised by investigative journalist Whitney Webb. In interviews and public discussions, Webb argues that digital identity systems are not simply about convenience. According to her analysis, they could become the foundation of a much broader digital infrastructure connecting identity, finance, public services, and government administration.
Used to facilitate human rights abuses. So it's not exactly as inclusive as they like to claim. It's inclusive in the sense that we want everyone equally included in our new system that we're creating, our new control system, fundamentally. The UN likes to talk about human rights and how this is ultimately a human rights project and things like that, or how it's empowering human rights. But in other documents of the UN, they refer to human rights not as inalienable rights, which is what most people think of when they hear the term human rights. In some of these UN documents, they refer to human rights explicitly as policy tools, or tools that can be used to basically implement, specific things and mechanisms that ultimately give, greater control over really any aspect of your life that they may want to influence. These guys also admit that the digital ID and CBDC is meant to be the same thing, and there's some very illuminating policy documents in this regard. So for example, there's this one UN document called the People's Money, they call it, and it essentially talks about creating a citizen-centric, SDG-aligned digital financial system, which is obviously the system that we've been talking about. And what they say in there is essentially once your savings and your money is onboarded onto the system, they feel that they reserve the right to access and use your funds to develop and implement the Sustainable Development Goals or build the infrastructure necessary for it. So they essentially think that your money is their money. And essentially what happened with the vaccine passport was to link your identity to your travel, to the freedom of movement. And if you didn't have one, you were excluded from entering certain places. So that, again, highlights the idea of how these digital IDs are inherently exclusionary, because if you don't have one, then you're excluded from, moving where other people that have those privileges. And if you don't abide by these various stipulations, you're excluded from participating in those things. And if you look at how the UN sponsored groups like ID 2020 are constructing this, they're trying to hide behind a facade of decentralization and construct digital identity in a way that they call as vendor agnostic, meaning that any private company in theory could develop a digital ID system that people could use. So you'll have a variety of companies or government agencies issuing digital ID, and it will not look like a centralized digital ID, but it will be. Based on what's been developed so far by these entities, it seems like that database is meant to be housed at the World Bank, and it's called ID4D.
But where we examine why this debate matters to every citizen, regardless of political beliefs. Throughout history, every generation has witnessed a technology that promised to make life easier. The internet connected the world. Smartphones placed information in our hands. Artificial intelligence is now transforming how we work, communicate, and make decisions. Digital identity may become the next major transformation. The real question is not whether this technology will exist. In many places, it already does. The question is how it will be governed. Will it give people greater control over their own identities? Or will it gradually concentrate more power in the hands?
After World War II, there was the Bretton Woods situation, which helped ensure U.S. financial hegemony around the world. And currently, we have what a lot of these same actors are calling the new Bretton Woods moment that needs to be seized in order to create a new global financial governance system. And they inherently frame that new system as being multipolar in nature. So just like digital IDs are inherently exclusionary and being sold as a tool for inclusion, CBDCs and also digital IDs are being framed as decentralized when in reality they're very centralized. So in the case of digital IDs, there's this push to create decentralized IDs, they call it, where your credentials are only unencrypted on a need-to-know basis. And, that sounds great in practice, but in reality, these rely on what they call trusted third parties to verify those credentials. And those are the same government agencies and big banks and other entities that are those same trusted third parties. So it's really not as decentralized as a lot of their proponents would like to claim. When you move into this digital currency era where the banks are issuing these stable coins, these deposit tokens that are programmable money, it's not just programmable, they're going to be sharing this data in the same database that the CIA and any other intelligence agency can access whenever they want without a warrant. This is like baking in warrantless spying on Americans into the new system to come. Prominent central bankers have been going on about the need to create a new financial system and a new financial governance system since at least 2019. So in 2019 at Jackson Hole, Mark Carney, who I believe then was head of the Bank of England, but he's former Goldman Sachs, was very vocal about the need to create this new financial system. And he said this new financial system that needs to be made needs to be based mainly on three things, what he called multipolar currencies, CBDCs, and global carbon markets. that this needed to be where the future financial governance system, the pillars on which it's built, essentially. And a few years later, Mark Carney creates this Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero under the auspices of the UN that is partnered with people like BlackRock's Larry Fink, the billionaire Mike Bloomberg, for example. And they openly promote the idea of seizing the new Bretton Woods moment in order to create a new global financial governance system.
Who decides who is recognized? And once that decision is made, what rights, opportunities, and protections follow? As governments continue investing in digital systems, transparency, accountability, privacy protections, and independent oversight will become increasingly important. Technology is only a tool. Its impact depends on the laws, institutions, and safeguards built around it. History shows that powerful technologies can expand freedom or reduce it. They can improve lives or create new challenges. The outcome depends on the choices societies make, not only when the technology is created, but also when it is regulated. That is why conversations like this matter. Not because every prediction will come true, and not because every concern will prove correct, but because informed citizens ask questions before systems become permanent. The future is not written by technology alone. It is written by the people who design it, the leaders who regulate it, and the citizens who choose whether to stay informed. So before accepting any headline or rejecting it, take the time to read multiple sources. Compare different viewpoints. Examine the evidence. Think critically, because in the digital age, information may become the most valuable form of freedom. If you found this analysis valuable and want more in-depth documentaries exploring technology